The famous quote goes that a journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. And in the story of today's podcast guest, that journey of 1,000 miles remains closer to the first step than you might think. From where he started as a YouthBuild student to the position he's worked himself into today, our guest has been able to watch both the organization and himself grow, adapt, and reinvent. A senior AmeriCorps portfolio manager for YouthBuild USA, it is our pleasure to welcome to the Voice of Opportunity Youth podcast, Matt Clerico.
So my name's Matt Clerico. I'm one of the senior AmeriCorps portfolio managers at YouthBuild USA. YouthBuild USA being the center of the affiliated network of YouthBuild programs, both domestically, but then also internationally as well. We used to be known as the mothership, right? It's kind of the center of the movement. And I support 20 programs across the country domestically because I work for AmeriCorps and help them do their work better and, make sure that we're aligning with our funders, expectations when it comes to grant compliance and that sort of thing. And pretty much being the guy behind the guy. I really appreciate you having me. I'm nobody special, but I think I have an important role in the network and I'm very proud of it.
Yeah, and I think it's so important to kind of note what a grand undertaking this endeavor is. When there's just so many different organizations that are under the umbrella and there's just so many different avenues that you kind of have to find success through, having people behind the scenes really is important. And to be able to kind of, take that mentality of, we put more people together, more resources together, more ideas together. All of a sudden, we have better programs. We have better results. We have, essentially, whether you're looking at our customers as the students we serve, the people who are writing us checks, whatever it is, we're able to meet those expectations more. So on some capacity, man, I feel like I'm pretty far down the totem pole. You might be a little bit in a different position, but like it is appreciated. And I do just want to kind of, as we get into the conversation, say like, thank you, man. We do appreciate what you guys do.
Well, thank you. And I appreciate you saying that, Matt. For many years, I worked at my own YouthBuild program. And one of the things that I always loved about the way our network works and YouthBuild USA's role in it was that supportive role, right? It can be very isolating when you're working at your local YouthBuild program, even if you have a couple other staff colleagues on your team. A lot of times the stakeholders or the funders are just constantly asking you for things. And one of the things I really loved about my program, YouthBuild Albany in Albany, New York, our relationship with YouthBuild USA was that they were always there to listen and always there to support, and may not have always had the answers, but could always navigate me to them. And that was one of the reasons why, after a decade at working at my program, I desperately wanted to be at YouthBuild USA, to the point where I think I spent 6 months applying for every job opening they had, to the point where the HR director at the time called me personally and she's like, "What do you want to do?"
Well, I mean, good, man, because that's what it really takes. And I think that there's something to be said about that, having that mindset of you take a lot of swings and not all of them are going to connect. But at the end of the day, eventually you rip one and it ends up putting something on the board there. So let's start back in Albany. Let's take a long-term look at kind of where you started in the world of YouthBuild and kind of how that prepared you for where you stand today.
Yeah, so I started as a participant myself in 1996 at the Albany Service Corps. Albany Service Corps was an initiative of the city of Albany that was very much patterned on Dorothy Stoneman's model for YouthBuild. So much so that, when we got funded through Housing and Urban Development, through HUD, back in the 90s, we got the rights to call ourselves Albany YouthBuild. So it was very much like a YouthBuild program, if not in name, but in culture and in structure. We had mental toughness. We did PT each morning. We did projects out in the community that were not only service-based, but also, designed to build up our occupational skills and job development. And we had a really great counseling component, which was really helpful for me at the time. I was 23, 24 when I joined. So kind of at the older end of our usual spectrum. I had my high school diploma. I even had a little college, but just an angry young man, down on my luck. My mother had passed away and you couldn't tell me anything. And I think I just joined because it sounded like something to do. And, the resources that I had during that year, whether it was feeling that impact on me of the service I was doing out in the community, making me feel like I was somebody worthwhile, or, like that counseling that I was able to participate in, it really just changed my life and changed who I was. And I'm forever thankful for that.
I think that gives you such a unique perspective when it comes to our students, as you were one of our students. And that's just so valuable, man, because, I've kind of, through my experiences with YouthBuild, have had to remind myself a lot of time that I do not come from the same background as the students that we serve. And sometimes that presents a challenge that, I've got to remind myself about that empathy. I've got to remind myself to get context matters and making sure that, I'm looking at things not as I see them, but as our students see them and as they've experienced things. So that's been a challenge for me. The fact that you've walked in their shoes, I'm sure builds a credibility, builds kind of an understanding that, other people have to work for, kind of comes naturally to you. So you mentioned you had gone through, high school, you were on the older end, you'd had some college under your belt. What made your YouthBuild experience different? Because obviously you caught fire on it. So what was that spark? What made this like, man, this is working and this fits for me?
Well, again, I think, as a young man in my early 20s, kind of dropping out of school and, I'm just going to go to work and I'm going to start doing things for myself and be independent. And you knock around for a couple of years and you realize, well, without a degree or without building my social capital and creating connections in the community, I'm going to be washing dishes my whole life because that's really all I'm qualified to do. And I think that was part of what fueled that kind of inner anger for that young man. And I remember seeing an ad in the paper for the program, the Albany Service Corps. It was like, do you want to take a year to change your community and change your life? And I'm like, well, yeah, I would love to do something of importance, of some worth. And, I had also done a lot of those. They had a lot of those go door to door and raise money for different nonprofits. And I tried that and I'm like, I'm not really a salesman. So I was kind of reluctant. I'm like, yeah, this might be that same experience. And then, after spending a week or two at the program, I was like, this is something different. I remember sitting down during mental toughness and one of the counselors, his name was Lou Trapani, just started his talk with our group. He said, are you ready to do something important? Are you ready to build some self-worth with what you can do in the community? Well, we're here to help you do that. And man, I ate that right up. I was ready to go at that point.
I love how you remember his name. That's always so important. Those pivotal kind of moments that you don't recognize in the moment, but all of a sudden you can look back, 10, 15, 20 years later and say like, hey, that was a tipping point for me. That was when something kind of lit. And I just think that's awesome to hear. I know that a lot of our students who are current and probably listening right now are like, oh my gosh, this guy found it in the newspaper. That's
What's a newspaper?
But so, that goes to prove the point, though, that you've been involved in YouthBuild for quite a while. So you've seen it through a lot of different phases, not only through the program, but what the world's gone through as well. So I know it's kind of a difficult thing to do, but can you kind of compare and contrast maybe YouthBuild when you started, where it's all gone through then to where we kind of stand today?
Well, yeah, I mean, so after my time as a participant, I was lucky enough to get hired on. I was a site supervisor and a construction trainer for many years at the program. And I mean, I guess at that time, I didn't really realize, I knew there were other YouthBuild programs, right? But I didn't realize what a network we had. In fact, the first couple of times I was contacted by YouthBuild USA, it was for some data, something they used to call the URD, the urgent request for data. And I'm like, well, you're not our funder. Who are you? Right. And it took me a long time to really understand that. But yeah, I mean, so I spent a lot of time with AYB and, saw it through like funding cycles when we had tons of resources and then losing DOL funding and then everybody packing up their desks and then hearing that we got an extension and okay, everybody can work for another 6 months. And yeah, so seeing a lot of those up and downs, but it was all very insular when I was in my city. And it wasn't until we got involved with AmeriCorps through YouthBuild USA that I started to see how broad the network was. And even at that time, going to conferences and trainings around the country, you got a feeling that we were all doing the same thing. And when I applied to YouthBuild USA, I was so confident. I'm like, you can't tell me anything about YouthBuild. I know more about YouthBuild than you know. And it's been such a learning experience since being at this level and working with programs across the country because we all share the same model. But it looks wildly different, Matt, across the country, whether it's a rural program where staff are getting up at 5:30 in the morning, getting in the van and picking up all the students because there's no public transportation in the swamplands out in Louisiana, right? Or, how the different populations inform the program and what's important to it and what its culture is. So, programs in the Southwest that are, serving Latinx communities and Hispanic communities and what's different there as opposed to a program up here in the Northeast, that are dealing primarily with an urban population of young people. And, the challenges are pretty much the same, but a little bit different and different enough that everybody has their own flavor of YouthBuild. It's always amazing to me how different we are, even though we're all following the same model and have the same values. Yeah. And then, another growth area for me is, like you're saying, seeing how it changed over the years. For a long time, I got to work at YouthBuild USA under Dorothy Stoneman and John Bell, who were our founders. And I felt so lucky. It was like working for Martin Luther King Jr., you know what I mean? You hear about these people and they become your personal heroes and then be able to learn at their feet what it's all about. But, just as valuable, I think, has been being part of YouthBuild USA during the transition. Dorothy retired as much as Dorothy is ever going to retire. And then, to have John Valverde come on as our president and CEO, John has such a different vision and, the priorities of our funders have changed too so much. It's been really exciting to see how we've changed as a network and how YouthBuild USA has changed as an organization. That's a long way to get to your answer, which was, we're broadening our scope, right? Like construction is always going to be part of what we do, an important part. But, our funders want us to do more. And I think our young people want us to do more too. Tafari Harper, who was the program manager at my local program in YouthBuild Troy, New York. He used to say all the time that we have to set a plate of diverse things and let young people pick what they need. And he was so right, because construction is great. And I'm a firm believer that the craft careers are aging out and we really need to feed them with young people that are excited about them because it's a great way to make a ton of money. But yeah, I mean, young people are interested in IT. They're interested in manufacturing and healthcare. And if we're going to stay viable and valid, we have to be able to provide that. So that's been one of the big things. I think another broadening of our scope since Dorothy moved on and John has taken over that I've really appreciated is, Dorothy was very focused on racial issues, and that's wonderful. And there weren't a lot of organizations that were when she started YouthBuild. And so her passion, her mission was very singularly focused there, where, under John, we're thinking more about gender roles and LGBTQIA matters, because these are the things that our young people are dealing with. It's not that we were against that before, but we never really considered it before on a national level. And inclusion and diversity on all kinds of stripes and colors is so important, not only to focus on, but for us all to be educated on too, so that we can create safe spaces for those young people.
Yeah, it wasn't long ago I talked with CEO John Valverde, and me and him kind of spoke about diversity. And one of the things he said, and I really, really liked it, was diversity is a fact. It's happening around us. All you have to do is open your eyes. And I think the world has opened their eyes a bit more. So obviously, as circumstance changes and the world's opinion on things changes, and as we all kind of take a look at, who our community and who our neighbors are, obviously that means that YouthBuild kind of has to follow. And I think there was a lot of great things you talked about there, and a couple of different ways we could go off things. But a big point there is you spoke about the students and what they want and what they need. I like to pretend like I'm, young like my students, but I'm not. I'm in almost to my 40s, and I'm, not getting any younger by any stretch. So there is a little bit of, man, you guys have grown up in a world that I did not grow up in. So if I'm trying to give you here's my solutions, here's what I would do. A lot of times they're like, well, that's not the problem that I'm facing. That's not the circumstances that are going on in my life. So being able to adapt, being able to change, I mean, that really has been, at least in my opinion, as I've been working here, one of the greatest strengths of this organization. And I know a big part of that's been pushed by COVID. And, I think every business in some capacity has, had to rise up out of the ashes and reinvent themselves. But we've implemented a customer service curriculum here at Project Rebuild in Canton, Ohio. And we've met really great success with it. We've had students who, really kind of were looking at customer service as that dead end job. And, oh my gosh, I don't want to do that. And I'm just going to get yelled at. I'm never going to make any money. Who have really said to themselves, hey, there's opportunity here. There's a chance for me to grow. There's a path for me to kind of follow. So, I think in some capacity, we have to look at the experience, maybe not as a buffet where we all get to pick our own little thing of what we want. But it's at the very least, it has to be customizable. It has to be something that serves the student, because when it comes down to it, they are our product. They are the most important thing that we do every day. And, I think having that mentality, that's really, to me, been one of the things where it's like, that's what makes YouthBuild different. I think so many other organizations with maybe the best of intentions, or even other opportunities, not just organizations, not just nonprofits, they really look at things as like, hey, you're going to fit what we have. And that's not what YouthBuild does. We try to take an all-encompassing look at the individual, and in some capacity, the individual student, but also the individual program, the individual, kind of what you have going on. And I think that's where so much of the strength comes from in this organization.
Absolutely. So, again, we talk about youth voice and member voice being important to us. And it's more than just a saying. It's more than just something we put on a banner. That's really what makes us different, right? Like, whether it's having a policy council, a youth policy council at your program that's, involved in the programming and representing different cohorts of students or different teams, or just like you're saying, like just listening to the young people, because, man, listen, I feel 28 in my heart, but I'm scratching on 50 these days. And I'm always surprised at what I don't understand anymore. And I think it's important to create those spaces for young people to, not just build up their leadership, but let's hear what they're saying, because what they're saying is important and it's vital. And if we're not listening to that, we're no longer valid. And it's frustrating because a lot of other similar nonprofits, I don't feel really have the systems built in to do that. And that's becoming a real problem in our country. I know what's best for you, so right. Do it. Right? No, let's listen to the young people. One of the great things I learned in my travels was we all do mental toughness to create orientation for the students and let them understand what YouthBuild is. But some of the longer standing and more savvy programs, like they'll have a staff mental toughness a little bit later, where the young people, whether it's the policy council or something that's built out of whatever leadership time with them, do presentations for the staff. Like, this is how we talk now, and these are the things we listen to, and this is what's cool, and this is what was 5 years ago cool that you think is cool, but is not, right? And I was like, that is genius, right? Because even as, young at heart people like we are, you're going to lose that after a while. And that's something I talk about with folks at YouthBuild USA. We're in a time now where there's a lot of people, including our chief program officer, Gina Plata, who comes from a program, so has that context of what it's like to work at a YouthBuild program. And, but yeah, man, I've been here for 10 years. There are things that I think I know that I'm starting to forget. So having that constant contact with you guys, the staff that are out there on the front lines, is really helpful, because I think there are levels to it, right? Like, I could start losing that context, and staff members at a program can start losing the youth context without that constant interaction and inviting that context and information from the young people.
Yeah, just always keeping in perspective that, you are the expert of your own life. Nobody else is. And giving people that respect, just like you expect that respect, giving that to the young people, it empowers them to make good decisions. It empowers them to make that positive change, because, I think anybody who works with young people knows you can't make that change for them. That is their decision. That is, you don't have the power to do it. So to kind of allow them to make the decision as opposed to them to force it, to me, that's one of the things that just makes YouthBuild different. So obviously you've seen a lot of students go through this program, whether you're looking at it from the seat you sit now, whether they were your classmates, whether they were, underneath of you in Albany. So what are some of the common characteristics of those students? What are some of those things where you've said, hey, YouthBuild students what are those students?
Yeah, there are a lot of things, right? I think, the most successful YouthBuild students are those that are open for new experiences and have that drive. And, again, a lot of times our young people, our populations are referred to as those kids, and people just want to write them off. But I have people of all sorts of stripes in my life, and I'm always trying to explain what I do and what we do as a network. And this isn't something where we're handing them out something. It's really like, here's a number of opportunities you can grab onto. And I think some of the most incredible young people that I've seen over the years are the ones willing to take advantage of that, right? Like, we may only have you with us for 9 months, but we're going to put all these things in front of you. What are you going to do with it? And I think it's there for a lot of young people, right? Especially, you think of the generation that's growing up now, Matt, between pandemics and, economic collapse and natural disasters. Like, they've really been up against it. And there's so many really good young people out there who just want an opportunity. Give me a tool that I can use, and let's run with it. And I think you see that a lot, right? I remember in my time with Albany YouthBuild, you get a bunch of young people in for mental toughness. Some of them are knocking around, they're kind of knuckleheads or whatever. But, once you get past that, because it's really just an armor that they put up, you know what I mean? They're just young people, and they want to take care of themselves, and they want to take care of their families like anybody else. And, again, if we could come to them from a place of, what do you need? Let me help you find it. Not, this is what I think you need. Let me save you. Then, they're going to buy into it and they're going to run with it. And I think you see that more often than not.
Yeah, the idea of one size fits all just doesn't apply at YouthBuild. If there's one thing students have taught me is just drop the labels, to try to put them into any one given box. They're just, there's similarities, but at the same time, they're just complex individuals. And, you have to kind of understand that, I think, before you can start to empower them and before you can start to kind of give them that, that first step they need to take, the real bite out of life there. So I kind of want to go back for a second, because I think this is important to talk about. You talk about the world kind of changes and, what our students have gone through and how it's been different. I mean, it was only a couple of weeks ago, the 20th anniversary of 9/11. Majority of my students were either still in diapers or not born yet during 9/11. These students have grown up with school shootings. These students are essentially, at least kind of the way I see it, living through civil rights era 2.0. So they really have had a very, very different experience than I have in life. And that's just one of those things that, if you're going to connect with them, you have to understand that you kind of have to be willing to put yourself in their shoes. So when you look at YouthBuild today, now this is post-COVID, this is, I don't want to say post-COVID, post-lockdown, this is, Delta variant, this is, this new day in America. Where do you see us? Where do you see our role in students' lives, in the community, in the country? How do we fit into this very turbulent time in America?
So, yeah, I think you're right. To bring it back to a theme we've been talking about, it's all about listening to those young people. Dr. Elizabeth Lynn, who was one of my, mentors, used to say all the time, there's that saying, it's like, teach a man how to fish. You feed him for a lifetime, give him a fish, you feed him for a day, build a road to the lake, and you're creating opportunity. But one of the things she used to add to that was, did you even ask the man if he eats fish? Right. And that, I remember when she's told me that blew my mind, because it really speaks to what Dorothy did back in the 70s, right? There were so many nonprofits and liberal, initiatives that were like, we're going to come in and we're going to save you. And she sat down and she's like, hey, if I could get some money and some resources into this community, what would you do? And I think now more than ever, that's super important, because like you say, we've lived through all these things, Matt, but from a different perspective. I don't know what it's like to be a 20-year-old these days. I don't know what it's like to not have the prospect of being able to finish college, or maybe even ever owning a home someday, or, you know what I mean? Like all these different things. And we need to listen to the young people to understand what they need and understand what we need to build for them so that we can move forward. That's really the secret. It's the secret sauce. It's the key to what we do.
I'm really glad you keep bringing Dorothy Stoneman up. And I think it's fantastic that you were able to work underneath of her and really kind of get a perspective on how she felt about the organization, how she felt about our students. Anybody who founds an organization like this, their fingerprints are going to be on it forever, hopefully. So when you look at what YouthBuild is now under, the circumstances of the world, under CEO John Valverde, how do you still see Dorothy? How does she still make her impact here?
So again, she's retired as our leadership, but she still works with young people, a lot of times some of the same young people. She has an organization called Opportunity Youth United, and they do a lot of the advocacy work that we can't always do because we're primarily federally funded, right? And, she's able to do some of that, getting out there and putting out a message and putting those young people on Front Street when it comes to, congressional decisions and stuff like that, where, there's some difficulty for us to do that, even for our programs, right? Like, when you're an AmeriCorps program, there are prohibited activities that you really can't be doing while you're wearing the logo or, earning hours towards your education award. Not that they're bad things to do in a lot of cases, it's just not appropriate, because AmeriCorps and even YouthBuild needs to be for everybody, right? So we can't really align with publicly in a big way with one thing or another in a lot of cases. So it's kind of great that she gets to spend her time doing that because she's freed from a lot of those tethers. Yeah, so we still run into her every once in a while. She still does a lot of fundraising for us and stuff. And yeah, she's pretty great. I was really, really honored to be able to work for her for many years before she moved on. So.
Yeah, and I'm glad she is still out there doing positive things, supporting the program. It really has to be amazing from her perspective to look at what was a simple question of what would you do in this community if you could, and then you just kind of look at the YouthBuild universe and the gigantic footprint that it has, and kind of the profound effect that it's not only had in people's lives, but in the broader scale of like in the communities, in the countries, and the places that we live and love. It really does. It just has to be, I mean, just amazing, and definitely a testament to the skill, the tenacity, the grit, everything it took to make this happen. It really does have to be something for her. So we've kind of talked about it, maybe danced around it a couple of times. I feel like I incorrectly said we're living in a post-COVID world. And that's not true. This is still a very real issue in the country for every organization. So when you look at the past maybe 18 months and the profound change that COVID-19 has had on the world, how has it changed how has it changed YouthBuild?
Well, I think YouthBuild is a network. I mean, we've seen that we've learned a lot, right? Everybody had to pivot very quickly, 16 months ago and figure out how we're going to do this thing remotely. I think it's brought up a lot of issues about, should internet access be a utility and not necessarily something that is just for the privileged few, because obviously we all need it. But yeah, YouthBuild is meant to be in person, right? It's a big part of the tone that we set and that family feeling and all of that. But being put in a situation where we couldn't be in person, I think we learned quickly a lot of new technologies and new methods that what I'm hearing now from programs are things that we will keep around for some, in some manner. As we slowly get back to the new normal and all of that, maybe part of that is using a platform like Zoom so that we can engage young people who are parents of young children, right? Like that was one of the hard things for a lot of programs back in my day, was engaging young women, because a lot of times they were taking care of small children and couldn't be at the program, 5 days a week like we expected. And in this world, they can participate, and maybe there is a way to do some hybrid things so we make it more accessible for more people. I think that's really cool. There's a lot I miss about having big in-person trainings and in-person conferences. And I'm always fighting everybody to try to get us back there. But there really is opportunity that comes along with these spaces. So, for example, one of our biggest offerings each year is being the conduit for all the directors across the country to get together at the National Directors Association meeting. And yeah, I mean, you're limited by budget, you're limited by, the number of participants and hotel rooms you can book for them. But in this space, what we saw over the last year was when we were able to offer a training or a gathering, not only would it be the leadership at a program, but the construction trainer would come too, or the educators would come as well. And I think there was a real opportunity for professional development that was untapped for many years, that I think we're definitely going to continue on doing a lot of things online because people can do them, or we can record them and they can view them, when they can, because again, you guys are super busy. Everybody's covering 3 bases, and to expect you to show up for a webinar at 2 p.m. Eastern time doesn't always make sense. But as we're building out some of our assets in our training for the field in this way, people can, again, like a buffet, pick out what they need and grab it when they need it.
Yeah, as someone who started working at YouthBuild during the pandemic, it was May of 2020 when I first got employed here. It really was nice to speak with people from all different sorts of organizations, all kind of across the country. And early on, I realized, and I felt a huge sigh of relief for myself, I don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's a lot of people who are walking this path and who can kind of show me the way. And I mean, I think there's just been countless examples of that, of whether it's a quick question in a chat box during a webinar, or it's a, hey, can we get on a Zoom call, talk for an hour, and you can kind of help me through this process. That synergy between the programs that's kind of been able to blossom through maybe not the best circumstances in the world, because none of us want to be doing online learning, or but that's definitely a silver lining to this cloud for me, has been like, man, I can access such a big, like, just a sea of information just based on the people who do the same job as I do. So opening that door up has definitely been something. I think it's also really worth noting here, COVID didn't invent this. It maybe accelerated the idea of, hey, we're going to be doing things digitally, but it didn't. This was happening prior to. And I look at my wife right now. Before the pandemic, she was working in an office. She thought she was always going to be working in an office, and now she works from home. And she never thought like, oh, I'm going to be an at-home worker. And she's had to kind of adapt and learn. So this isn't exclusive to our program, and this is what our students are going to be facing. These are the jobs that they're going to be pursuing, even if it's still a trade job. And I'll look at a couple of we've got great partners here in Canton. But we've been working with an organization, HP Products. One of the things they told me is, hey, our first interview is always going to be virtual moving forward. Yeah, the guys are going to be in here and they're going to be welding and they're going to be bending pipe and they're going to be doing these things. But they're always going to have that first in-person interview. And to me, that was like, man, this isn't just a, hey, until COVID is over. This is going to be a part of our future. We are going to have to prepare our students for it. So forcing our hand to kind of get ready for it, I feel like it's honestly, it's a little bit of a curse, but kind of a big blessing too. It really has made us reevaluate, look at things differently, and recognize that the world is changing.
Absolutely. And, to touch on one of the things you said earlier was, I think it's great because, again, when I was working at my program, it did feel very isolating. And, now attending our national events and stuff like that, you really see like YouthBuild USA is at its best when we're the conduit for you guys to just get together. Because, you might be hired to be the AmeriCorps coordinator at Project Rebuild and be like, how do I figure out all this paperwork? And there are literally 65 other people in the network who already do this and already know how to do it well. Construction trainers, the same way. Every position at a YouthBuild program. So yeah, that's really great. And obviously it's more fun to do in person, but like you say, this isn't going away, right? Whether COVID goes away and then the next thing comes along, whatever it might be, I think we're a little bit more prepared for the future because of it.
Yeah, I think that's definitely, that's something I feel like I said earlier, every company's had to do it, but it's something that YouthBuild has really embraced. And I think as an organization, we should be proud of that. Another thing that I think that has been a challenge for not only YouthBuild, but for kind of everyone on the planet right now. We're sitting here in September of 2021, and the idea of a labor shortage is just making so much headway and just so much news. And like, there's all these jobs, and everywhere you go, it seems like wages are going up. How have we, an organization, how have we kind of decided to handle that? And how have we, utilized that? And how has that changed how we're kind of approaching the future there?
Well, yeah, I think that remains to be seen. And I'm maybe not the most qualified person to really talk about it. And I probably should also make the caveat that, a lot of this stuff we're talking about is my opinion. I don't necessarily represent YouthBuild USA. That's John's job. I'll let him do that. He does it very well. But yeah, I think, it presents opportunities and challenges, right? Like, I think being a workforce development program that is comprehensive and can help a young person going from being unemployed or underemployed to really jumping into a career where they can support their family and move forward, whether it's getting them into PSE, post-secondary education, or getting them in a crafts trade that, again, these crafts trades are aging out because young people they're not going into them. So, I think we've always been positioned to really make a difference when it comes to a young person's job trajectory. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of open positions now. I see it all the time. People have signs up and stuff like that. I mean, again, this does not represent YouthBuild USA. This is my personal opinion, is that maybe some of these wages should have been higher earlier. You know what I mean? Everybody deserves to live in a world where they can provide for their families, and not that, everybody's making minimum wage and then somebody is profiting off of their labor. And I think that's an important lesson to teach our young people, that you deserve more than that. You deserve more than to be underemployed.
I always try to drive this home to our students. I feel like the first time in a very long time, the job seeker is in the driver's seat, and they now have opportunities in front of them, not only to find something that fits them, but something that they enjoy and something that they feel passionate about, something that they can actually, feel not just compensated for, financially. And I'm by no stretch trying to say that's not important. That's obviously very important, but they can be fulfilled by, and they can feel satisfied with. And I really think that's just really important. And I think our students, and hopefully, I'm not just speaking for my students, hopefully students kind of across the country are starting to realize, and I try to drive this home when we talk about job interviews with my students. Yes, you are trying to convince that person to hire you. But you are also trying to figure out, is this the right fit for me? Is this the job that I want to be at? Is this, do their values align with me? And I think that's just a really profound thing when you give them the keys, for lack of a better term, and you say, dude, drive the car. Where do you want to go? What do you want to do? I think a lot of job seekers from years past are probably like, oh my gosh, if this world just would have existed when I was, younger, my whole life could have been different.
Absolutely. I mean, it is. It's a great time. And, that was one of the things that, some programs were always concerned about. Like YouthBuild creates this almost like insular world where, your opinions are respected, young person, and, and all of that. But then we push them out in the world, and there's not all of that waiting for them. And now, in a way, there it is, right? Like there is some opportunity there, because you don't have to just settle for, the low paying minimum wage job, right? Like, you have some credentials now because of your time with YouthBuild, and you can push for a little bit more, and you can, advocate for yourself. And I think that's really great that we have that opportunity.
Yeah, the fact that, you can walk in there and you can show that, hey, I'm reliable. Hey, I am willing to learn. Hey, I am, not only skilled in the hard skills, but I'm skilled in the soft skills. I know how to communicate. I know how to act at work. That's really going to just set our students apart, and really, like I said, just put them in the driver's seat. And I genuinely, that's something that I personally, as somebody who's looking to help young people find that career path, that excites me. That's one of those things where I look at, and I know a lot of people are like, man, there's just a for hire sign in every window. And I'm like, awesome. Like this is what we're supposed to be doing. This is how it's supposed to be. So, we keep talking about our students, and, like I said earlier, they are the most important thing. At the end of the day, not only are they our product, I mean, they're the cheeseburgers we sell, but they're also our customers. They're the people, who are getting the most out of us. So I think that's unique to, maybe nonprofits, but certainly to YouthBuild. I imagine there's YouthBuild students listening to this podcast right now, kind of having heard you and I talk. Matt, you've been in their shoes, and you have done something with your life that you feel proud of, something that you feel like has made a difference. What advice could you give to somebody who's just now sitting down at that desk saying to themselves, what am I doing with my life?
So, yeah, I think it ties back to a couple things we've talked about. I think it's important, especially if you're just starting out at a youth build program, to really appreciate that this is something different, right? And you might have a primary service track or a primary vocational track like construction, but during your time with Youth Build, you're going to have the opportunity to do these secondary projects and meet people in your community and connect with people who probably would have just disregarded you if they saw you walking down the street. And taking advantage of that opportunity to build your social capital is so important. Another person that I admire very much, Ed DeJesus, talks about social capital all the time. And a lot of our programs use his curriculums because it's more than just networking, right? It's showing your value to those people and having a chance to connect with them and be memorable. Because, like you said, you were surprised I remembered some of the names, and I'm not gonna lie, as I get closer to 50, I'm forgetting a lot of names, Matt, but there are some people that, during my time, either as a member of that program or as a staff member at that program, there were people I met and made a good impression on and demonstrated my value that years later, I still know or still interact with or are still mentors or were key in getting me this position that I'm in now. That is so important, right? It's not what you know, it's who you know. And you can really tell when you visit a program that gets that, because I'll walk in and the young people are the first ones that come up to me and they're introducing themselves and they are, curious as to who I am and why I'm visiting the program. And can I give them a card? And I'm like, yeah, you get it. Because that more than anything is going to serve you throughout the year. And another way to take advantage of those opportunities is not a lot of times do you have a chance to try out a bunch of different things, right? And at Youth Build, you definitely will, right? And it may not be construction that lights your fire. It might be working at a food bank or, doing some sort of holiday project where you're working with younger kids and being seen as an adult and as, a paradigm, as a paragon, somebody to look up to. And use those opportunities to find out what really lights your fire and then look for that afterwards. And but the social capital thing is so important. Matt, I still know, people like John Holmberg, who was the director of my program, and Lou Trapani, and, even Matt Fisher, who's our senior director at AmeriCorps. I met him for the first time when I was in my late 20s and ran into him at a conference. And, when I decided this is what I wanted to do, I pestered him all the time. And finally, here we are. I've been working for him for 10 years. So those connections are so important.
I always look at our students and the 9-month program that we have. A lot of our students have children, and I always kind of say, guys, look back to the pregnancy, and that was not a very long time, but look at the profound changes that happened during that time, from when you first see the stick to when you first hold your child. And I really do think that 9-month time, it almost feels like it's not coincidence to me, because there are opportunities for just such big changes. And I've seen them happen within our students. And I've seen what a real difference that can make. And you talk about social capital, and something I always try to tell my students as I start with them, and certainly as I end with them, I think a lot of young people will talk about their haters. Their haters make them famous. Their haters are their motivators, and if that throws fuel on your fire, so be it. But what I always try to tell them is, don't live your life trying to prove your haters wrong. Live your life proving the people who believed in you right. And when you come to Youth Build, when you come to Project Rebuild in Canton, Ohio, you have a team of people who believe in you and who will stick with you. Now, there's, of course, support and expectations, and sometimes it's tough love. But at the end of the day, if you have not had that support system, if you have not had those people in your corner, you come to Youth Build And those people are now in your corner, and those people are going to bend over backwards, move any mountain, come hell or high water. It doesn't matter what opportunity or what obstacles stand in our way. We will be there with you to overcome those and to empower you and to keep cheering for you. So, I just think that, and when you talk about social capital, that's the thing that stands out to me, is that, we've all got a crew of people. But we're going to be your crew of people who are going to keep cheering for you, who are never going to back down, who are always going to be there. And I don't know, at least the stories I've seen, the movies I've seen play out as I've been around YouthBuild, that's usually what's one of the biggest difference makers.
Well, absolutely, certainly at the program level, but even across the country or internationally, we've had to do the Conference of Young Leaders, which is our big youth leadership conference. We've had to do that virtually the last year or two as well. But, to see the young people understand that not only are they part of what you're doing at Project Rebuild, but that you're part of this nationwide movement, this national family, this international family of young people that are doing the same things for the most part in their communities that you are. Like, that's pretty exciting, right? Everybody wants to be part of something, and our young people more so than others, I would think. And, that's been one of the exciting things about being with YouthBuild USA during this transition to John Valverde's leadership. Like, he gets it. There's, a broader vision. We're all on their team. You may not know my name, but man, you could use me for a reference, because if I know you've been in YouthBuild, I got your back. John Valverde has your back. Some director in Texas that you've never met would, have your back. And that's powerful.
A man who has lived the YouthBuild story all the way from a student to the role that he plays today. Matt, your insight has just been unbelievably helpful. I think it's a great thing that you've been able to find your passion in this and to ignite that passion in others. Just listening to you today, man, I feel like I'm fired up. I feel like I'm ready to go do my job. I feel like I'm ready to go pass this on to the students. So, on behalf of them, on behalf of myself, and on behalf of everyone listening, man, thank you very much.
Thank you, Matt. And one thing I can say on behalf of YouthBuild USA is just, we love you. We love what Project Rebuild is doing. We love what all the local programs are doing. You guys are doing the hard work. And the fact that we get to support you and create spaces for you guys to get together and even commiserate sometimes or just bond together as a national family, like, that's an honor. And every day, some days I'll get down, I'm having a hard day, but then I think about what you guys do each day, what your young people are facing. And man, I just feel so honored to be able to support people that are doing that work. And it's certainly a Project Rebuild.
To paraphrase Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., you don't have to see the whole staircase. You just need to take the first step. All of those years ago, there's no way that Matt Clerico could see the whole staircase and where his decision to join YouthBuild would end up taking it. Now, many moons and countless steps later, there's a clearing behind him, a trail that he has helped establish to guide young people standing in the same shoes that he once wore. The Voice of Opportunity Youth podcast is recorded in the Project Rebuild studios in beautiful Canton, Ohio. To find out more information, visit youthbuild.org. On behalf of YouthBuild and the Opportunity Youth we serve, thank you.